welcome to the May the 21st, 1996 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city and also some of the people that have caused that history to happen. This show, being taped on the 21st, will be shown on the 28th, because that is a very special day for us. And with your permission, we would bring forward, front and center, a very special young man, the commander of Navy Dallas and wherever he wants to be, Mr. Jim Cannon. Captain, glad to have you with us.
It's great to be back. It's great to be back.
Yes, great to be back. We consider this sort of a salute to several different very special days that we have in mind. First of all, Armed Forces Day was last weekend.
Yes.
On Saturday when we had Western Days Parade. It was also, we saluted Armed Forces Day before that. And then of course this coming weekend will be the Memorial Day weekend, and we'll also want to salute that. And of course then June the 14th, Flag Day, we can't miss saluting that. And as long as you're on board, we're just going to salute all of it up until the 4th of July. And with your permission, your interview today is dedicated to all of the servicemen that have been so important to our lives over all of the many years of our country. And we want to thank you for being here with what we call your exit interview, even though we didn't want you to exit. Those things do happen, and so we want to thank you for the tenure that you have experienced at Navy Dallas, here in Dallas Grand Prairie, as we call it, our Naval Air Station. And we'd like for you to look out into your camera and tell us about Navy Dallas as it stands today, about the transition over to the Joint Reserve Base in Fort Worth, and what you do there, and just bring everyone in our viewing audience a little bit up to date of the things that you can tell us about what's going on with your life.
Right. Well, it's a continuing process. We've started the move in earnest, and every week we see more capabilities moving across town. Most recently, we've taken our entire legal department and half of our admin department. We've closed the galley down at NAS Dallas, and we have moved that across town. As the sailors and Marines and the different other service forces move in, those capabilities just continue to increase. So the move has been going very well. Construction seems to be the largest share of the costs in things like the buildings new and refurbished. So that continues to be a source of great pride for us, because it's a great facility. One of the things that in the drawdown of the Navy, and some call it the right sizing, is we need to have infrastructure in the center of the country. And so this great city of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, with Grand Prairie right in the heart of it, we want to maintain that presence so the drilling reservists and traditional guardsmen will have a place to drill and affiliate with the Naval Reserve, Marine Reserve, Air Force Reserve, Guard, and Army.
So in finality then, when all of Navy Dallas moves all of their capabilities a little bit to the west, you will leave us with the Guard. Will that be on the base?
Yes, there is a plan right now to leave the Army Guard in place in their facilities. And in fact, today there was a meeting in the Dallas City Hall to discuss that issue, and I think that the Navy is supporting that. There always was a plan for them to leave some component back. We thought the aviation units were going to move across town, but there have been some significant funding shortfalls, which we really don't have enough money in the budget to build armories at both Dallas and at JRB, and so for right now, even the aviation units are going to stay in place.
Well, there's one thing that I attended the very last service at the chapel.
Yes.
And that has been moved. That has gone to the west, and we appreciated so much the invitation to come to the last services of the chapel on that magic day, I believe, of about
April 21st.
April 21st,
right.
About a month ago, and
right.
It was great to be there, and we enjoyed the services that day. And
we had some great congregations and some very loyal friends that had been at the chapel in the 50s. Now, even though there was a new chapel built about a decade ago, our history goes back to the little chapel that was located under the trees that right now is still in Grand Prairie. It's located at the corner of Polo and Carrier.
Yes, it
and
is.
It's been expanded, but it's still a pretty chapel. A lot of our congregations were married in it, and there's a lot of emotional ties to it. So it's nice to have it still here in Grand Prairie. And our other chapel is now closed, with all of our chaplains and the administrative staff moved over on April 21st, and it's operating. In fact, we were there today. We had a memorial service for our late CNO. It was very nicely done, and we were able to attend that. So.
Yes, and the chapel that is located on Polo and South Carrier is now in Grand Prairie, Texas, and it has a Grand Prairie significant landmark, and I understand that the church is planning on researching and getting a state marker
Excellent.
for that. So your chapel is well handled in Grand Prairie, Texas. We're glad that it left the Dallas property so that we could aid and abet it here in Grand Prairie, Texas. We try to get it one way or the other. We may not be able to annex Navy Dallas, but finally we'll move the building over here into Grand Prairie, Texas and take care of it.
Wonderful.
Okay. Now, how about the Fort Worth Joint Base?
Mm-hmm.
Are you commuting to there? Do you
Yes.
have assignments there?
Yes, this morning I spent my first half day there, and as we get closer and closer to the move, I see 3 days a week to eventually every day spending at least half a day at Fort Worth. Now, our base here at Dallas is still larger, but there will be that time, we're hoping in the late month of June, that we will have the preponderant number of people and capacity at Fort Worth, where then I'll probably start each day there and then commute back to Dallas. I'll still live at Quarters A in NAS Dallas until the change of command, which is late August.
Yes, late August. And the change of command date for you at Navy Dallas?
It's 24th of August. It's a Saturday, and I promised Ruthie that you'll have an invitation. We wouldn't want to do a major significant ceremony without inviting you.
Yes, and bring us up to date on Commander Garrett, Bill Garrett.
Well, Bill Garrett is probably the most important person at NAS Dallas, because he's the executive officer, and he's really the person that I rely on, and he has done a marvelous job. He's been there over 3 years. We're real proud of him that he recently promoted to captain, which is 06, or like a bird colonel in the Army or Marines. Yes. So one of the things with promoting is that the good news, we found out that Bill promoted, and then almost within a week we found out that they have great plans for Bill to move his lovely family to the Pentagon, and he's going to work in aircraft procurement, which is in the N-88 staff, and he'll be responsible for all aircraft, not only the ones that we presently have, but the future aircraft that will populate our flight decks into the next century.
All right. And if he's going to the Pentagon, where is Captain Jim Cannon going after August 24th?
Well, I also am going to the Pentagon, a little bit different job. I'll work directly for my boss, which is Admiral Tom Hall, in his flight program office. The Pentagon always has codes, but needless to say, Captain Select Garrett and myself will be less than a city block away, and I find that, really reassuring that we've served together on 2 tours, and I'm sure we'll be there to support each other if there are tough days ahead at the Pentagon.
Yes, and the former CO, Captain Miller, I believe, was at the Pentagon. Is he still there?
No, actually Rick moved to a strategic studies group, which is at the Naval War College in Providence, Rhode Island. So he was at the Pentagon until very recently, but he was handpicked by the same admiral to go up. Rick Miller just has a wealth of information, and he pours everything of his fiber into a job, and he was a great select to go to the strategic studies group. I'm sure he's real happy up there. It's about a 1-year assignment, so he'll be there at least through next summer.
Well, thank you for bringing our history up to date for all of those in our viewing audience that are very, very interested in the things that happen at Navy Dallas. But
yes.
Who's coming on board to replace you? Not really to replace you, but to stand in for you. How's that?
Well, the Navy system works, and they screen senior captains, and my relief is a Captain Dale Llewellyn. I've known Dale probably 9 years, I think is what we figured out. He came out of the A-7 Corsair community. That aircraft was built at Chance Vought right here in Grand Prairie. He flew that for 12 years, and then he transitioned to the FNA-18 Hornet. He had a Hornet squadron that was located at NAS Cecil Field, and my favorite Hornet squadron is, they're called the Fighting Blue Dolphins.
Yes.
So Dale is, highly motivated and totally qualified to come in and take over. He's very excited. He was here last week. We started our turnover. We also got together for some evening meals, and he'll be back in late June to complete the turnover. He'll be a very great addition to the local community. He and his lovely wife Brenda are looking forward to a very fruitful 2-year stay like Captain Miller and I both had.
All right. Are the Dolphins in Florida?
Yes, they're at Cecil Field, which is a suburb of Jacksonville, Florida. NAS Cecil Field is the location. And they're still there, although they are a closure base, they're going to move the Blue Dolphins up to Naval Air Station Atlanta. Hopefully they get up there just before the Olympics so they can really enjoy the summer.
Oh, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
All right. And as far as Navy Dallas is concerned, how's Jean? Bring us
Well,
up
Jean's
to date
wonderful.
on
Jean did not work today. We gave her Monday and Tuesday off, so we're really and anxiously looking forward to seeing her. Jean is my executive secretary, and she's worked for about 7 commanding officers.
Yes.
She's been there longer than 13 years. I never asked her exactly how long, but I know that at least the last 13 she's been supporting 7 different COs, and if it wasn't for Jean and the continuity, the base would collapse. She is the continuity, the glue that holds everything together. She's wonderful.
Will she be there until the doors are closed, and then what happens to Jean?
No, actually, we're going to move Jean a little bit early, about the time of the change of command. Her and her admin staff will move also to NASJRB to support myself, and then on the change of command to be there for Captain Llewellyn.
Yes, and all the way to Fort Worth. But
Yes.
I guess we're going to have to allow that unless we proselyte them back through some other act of war or whatever.
Well, what will remain at Dallas will be a site commander to be named. As of yet, we have not named that person, and they'll have a very small staff, mostly of public works personnel, to act as the closing agency. As more capacity moves across town, we'll need to close buildings and hangars and turn them safely over, turn the utilities off, and that will be the function of the crew that remains behind.
The site commander, will that be someone more permanent or someone that will not be transferring away, such as
Yes.
you and the
Yeah,
guys
in
at
the sense
Dallas?
of permanent, we look at the site commander as being on board for about 2 years, and that we certainly feel by the summer of '98, Dallas will be closed. The only people to remain might be the Army on the west side of the field, and also a very small contingent of Texas Air National Guardsmen as they shut down their facilities.
During your tenure, you've had some very exciting things to happen. You've had air shows, you have had young people come on board, the young people's group that you've had. You've had the transition of many different things that happened. What's been the most exciting highlight of your tour here at Navy Dallas?
Well, I've always had a special place in my heart for honorary commanders, and that's a group of civic leaders here in Grand Prairie. We also invite civic leaders from Irving, Arlington, and Fort Worth to participate. And Ms. Jackson, I know, was a member of honorary commanders when I first got here, and sometimes we call them the ornery commanders, but it's in a very positive sense. And what we try to show the honorary commanders is what they get for their tax dollar. The services may seem sometimes complex and complicated, the Navy battling with the Air Force for budget, but I think the taxpayer, and specifically the American taxpayer, gets a great bargain. We want to show them the capabilities of the Marine Corps and the United States Navy, the diversification within the Air Force and the Coast Guard and the Army. So we take the honorary commanders around the country, and we also show them the capabilities right here at Dallas and Fort Worth. Our most recent trip being at NAS Pensacola, which is the birthplace of naval aviation, we were able to show them the history from the very first days of aerial flight in 1903 right on up to the present Hornets and Tomcats that the fleet actively flies. And this is to educate and to, I think through education, have that confidence that our country does spend the tax dollars wisely, and that we choose to be powerful as a means to protect the local and American population.
In the honorary commanders, that was an exciting experience. I did get to go to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and then when we recently had the tragedy that happened there, that made me feel so much closer to the happening, because I had been there on site, had seen the maneuvers in person, and that made it more real to me, and we were very sad to hear that.
I remember that trip, and in fact, Ruthie, you and I remember getting a lecture on landmines.
Yes.
A very good opportunity to learn about landmines, learn how they work. We also saw a capability exercised by the United States Marine Corps, which showed how they build the Marine Corps around their rifle company. And I think that was very enlightening for me, someone who's been in the military over 20 years, and I know that the honorary commanders really enjoyed that trip. It was a day that was filled with fun things to do. We saw the Harrier, the A-6, the Hornet. We saw divisions, artillery, recoilless rifles, just what makes the Marines work. And it was a very productive day, and I think everybody walked away with a real respect of our Navy Marine Corps team and their capabilities and how well they use the money the taxpayers give to make a better America.
With very much pride also. I guess my most memorable occasion was when I got to ride the Huey. And
Yes.
they took all of the sidebars off, and I was out in the yard flying over Lake Joe Pool, and I mean outside, and it was so exciting for a lady of my age to be able to brag about riding in a Huey, and that was very exciting. I'm going to put that in my memoirs too.
Well, we normally don't fly women over the age of 30 in Hueys, but we made an exception. And I can always remember when you, Ruthie, when you took off and in the helicopter to get a tour of the local area, how thrilling that must have been. A lot of fun. I'm glad they kept you seatbelted in and
yes,
had a good time.
that was a historical moment.
Okay.
All right, now we need to get down to a little bit more history, and that's your wonderful family.
Oh, yeah.
2 or 3 years ago when you came on board, we interviewed you and your beautiful wife, and also you had a son that was going off to the academy or was in the throes of the academy. What's happened to all of the family now? Where are we?
Well, we've really only been here 2 years, but
Yes.
it does seem longer sometimes. My son, who was at the Air Force Academy, graduates next week.
You would
So,
name him again?
Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah, and he'll be a second lieutenant, commissioned. I'm trying to remember the date, but I know it's Wednesday of next week.
Yes.
And he has plans and has already been selected for flight training. He'll go to Del Rio, Texas, Laughlin Air Force Base, and begin flight training in the T-38 Talon. He's our oldest, and my daughter graduates this Friday night on the 24th from Grand Prairie High School. She's a Gopher, and she's done very well. National Honor Society, and she's been accepted and is looking
You would
very
name
much.
her too?
Yes, Kristen,
Yeah.
and she is looking forward to her opportunities at Pennsylvania State University. So she'll be a Nittany Lion starting this September.
Oh my,
So she'll-
that's a transition, isn't
Yes,
it?
yes.
And your beautiful wife, how's she going to like the Pentagon?
Well, I think my wife is really looking forward to moving. We lived in Washington before, and I think that gets us within 3 hours of both of our families. So I think that's
Yes.
going to be nice to be that close. We are from Pennsylvania. I didn't tell you about my youngest son, which is Danny. He's in Truman, which is 6th grade, and of course he's getting ready to graduate this week. And he'll go to 7th grade and go to school up in Northern Virginia, probably in the Burke, Reston area.
Yes, all right. And how has he enjoyed Truman?
Well, he's really enjoyed that school because of the music program. Now, he's a ice hockey fanatic, and sometimes you don't think of band and ice hockey as being mutually compatible, but he has a passion in his life for both. He learned how to ice skate when we lived in Northern Virginia and brought that here, and he plays up at the Star Center, which is up in Valley Ranch. And but I think to focus on Truman, what has been such a great plus for us is the academics there have been a great challenge to Dan, and I think he's been served well. But that they have such an awesome band program, and he's made several friends. He plays the cornet, and he really enjoys that part of his life. He maybe doesn't enjoy practicing as much as he has to, but he sure enjoys the public demonstrations of when the parents come and the band plays. It's very nice to see him get so excited about something that we've seen terrific results in 1 year.
As a history major, you have done very, very much to document the history of Navy Dallas, because during your 2 years, I know that they sent a team down from Washington, D.C. To do a lot of history documentation. Are you pretty well happy with the way things are going and the shape you're leaving this in as far as historical records?
I'm very pleased. There is a process for the BRAC closures that protects any building or site that has historical
Yay!
significance. I know Ruthie is much more of a history buff than the average person, and that's one of the reasons I really like you, Ruthie, is you really care about that. But I can honestly say that the focus has been to save those buildings at Dallas that have historical significance. There are buildings that are specifically identified, although some of them do sit on land that belongs to the city of Dallas. And when we eventually deed back to the city of Dallas those properties. That decision will then fall on the city of Dallas to decide what the ultimate disposition of those properties would be. As long as they're in the Navy hands, we have kept them in top-notch condition.
Yes.
And we want them to be part of the redevelopment, and I hope that 20 years from now, when I have the opportunity to return to the area, that I could pull up to what is the front gate and still see buildings 1, 2, 12, 15, the water tower. Some of those things that are really part of the history of the Naval Air Station that have been in place since 1941, have seen USO shows with Martha Ray and Louis Armstrong. The things that have made life for all the sailors and Marines, both men and women on the base, to something to remember as a large chunk of their life.
Do you think we could just even hope that we could have one of those buildings as a historical site with all of the memorabilia inside and maybe volunteer docents or something like that to take
Well,
care of
we have
that?
suggested to the redevelopment that we leave the quarters, which are quarters A and B, as a possible site for a museum. And the location, the access to the Tang Gate would be perfect to keep the buildings
Yes.
in that capacity. The homes are in very excellent condition. In fact, I live in quarters A and Captain Select Garrett lives in quarters B. And I can tell you that our Public Works Department has a lot of pride and ownership in all the buildings, but especially in quarters A and B. And it's really been one of the best perks of my Navy career to be able to live on board Naval Air Station Dallas. They're beautiful quarters, they're well built, and we've really enjoyed that opportunity to live there.
The traditional ceremony that you have for the change of command, that's so exciting. There are a lot of our viewing audience that would never have that opportunity. Would you describe the ringing of the bells and the excitement of the change of command in just a few minutes?
Yeah, I think anything in the Navy is steeped in tradition and history, and as Ruthie says, the ringing of the bells is to simulate coming on board a ship, and you ring the bells based on the rank and honor of the guest. It could be as few as 4, it can be as many as 8, I guess, if the president would arrive. Our guests would probably get anywhere between 4 and 6 bells, and they come through what would be a quarterdeck. Again, a simulation of the quarterdeck on a ship as you arrive, rendering salutes. We have side boys with a bosun mate blowing the whistle. And once the ceremony begins, it's very simple in its concept. It's the passing of full authority from one commanding officer, be it he or she, to another. And in that simple gesture of saying I am relieved of command and I have assumed command to a superior that in attendance, that's pretty much the ceremony in a nutshell. The others, whether or not people speak, how long they speak, that's also steeped in tradition. Is the quicker the speech, the better to get off the stage. Especially, we all know in 24 August it's going to be very hot, so I doubt I'll have probably more than 2 to 3 minutes worth of comments. We want to be gentle to the people that take the time to be out there to participate in the event. It's also a very public event, so that all the troops, all the sailors, and in attendance see that finality, that the responsibility has passed, in my case, from Captain Miller to me, and in August of this year, it'll be from myself to Captain Llewellyn. And a minute after the ceremony, he has full responsibility for all the resources, human and material resources of the base.
That's wonderful. And will he get to pick his very own CO as you have done with Bill Garrett?
Well, no, he doesn't, nor did I. I don't want to make it sound like I actually picked Bill. I did use all my influence to get Bill orders to Dallas to come here as the admin officer, knowing that his seniority, if he did well, which I knew he would be a #1 candidate to be the executive officer. In Captain Llewellyn's case, they screened a specific, another Captain Select to be the executive officer. And his name is John Werner. He also comes from the Washington arena. He has a background in A-7s also, the same Corsair built that Chance fought. And he has more recently been an adversary pilot, flying the A-4 and the F-5 as an adversary against Navy fighters to train us on what to expect in case of war. So John comes with great expectations. His wife is from Texas. They're very excited about being here. They'll also get here in the middle July timeframe. So it'll be a complete new team. As Bill and I move on to the Pentagon, we'll turn over our responsibilities to both Dale and John, and they'll do remarkably well. They've worked together in the past. They both worked at the Bureau of Naval Personnel together, and the confidence and that ability to work together is already there. They're very excited about it.
That's wonderful. All right, all of the dust settles, you're on your way to the Pentagon. What does the future career of Jim Cannon
Well,
look like?
I keep it real simple. I always want to make a difference in the performance of my job for the betterment of the Navy. So as the Navy continues to give me the opportunity to perform, if they're good orders and they're opportunities to make a difference, I definitely want to be a player. The orders that I'll go to Washington to will be for about 3 years, and we'll see what the Navy offers me beyond that. But to work in the Pentagon and to work directly for my boss is really the best that I could do, and I'm real pleased about that opportunity.
That's wonderful. All right, in the minute and a half that we have left, I'd like for you to look out into your camera and say what you'd like to Grand Prairie and to the young folks, and give some encouragement to them, and maybe thank the city and the chamber.
Well, I've always thanked the city and the chamber for their friendship and making me a part of the community. But since it is Memorial Day, I would like to say that in a historical perspective, since 1868, we've celebrated this event to honor the war dead. And President James Garfield kicked off the first Memorial Day at Arlington National Cemetery in 1868. Little would he know that just sailors and Marines, over 80,000, have given their lives in defense of their country. I know the numbers are much greater when you add in the Army and the Air Corps, Army Air Corps, which is today the Air Force, Coast Guard. It's a time to remember what we have and to appreciate that fact, that that peace comes with a tremendous price. And I'm sure each and every one of those people would just enjoy being remembered. They certainly gave willingly for their families and for the future of America. And I think that's what Memorial Day is all about.
That's wonderful. It's just been really great to have you in Grand Prairie, Texas, as of Navy Dallas for 2 years, and your wonderful family. Even though some of them have been in other areas of the world, we want to thank you for all of the things that you have done for our city, and for the camaraderie, and for pulling us all together as a team. I know that there are many things that you could say now just to the young students that may want to go into the Navy. We have a half-minute left. Use that half-minute to talk to the young boys and girls.
Well, I'll make it a good half minute. The Navy is hiring right now to positions of great responsibility. A lot of people feel incorrectly that in a downsizing Navy that we don't need new young recruits. There's a 55,000 requirement each year to join just the United States Navy. I don't know what the Marine numbers are, but they're equally as high. And I think that anybody that's motivated, that wants to give of himself for all the right reasons, to build a backbone in a country that you'll be proud of and your family will be proud of. So if you have that inclination, come out to our air show at the end of June. You'll see the Blue Angels perform. You'll see naval aviation at its best.
That will be in Fort Worth?
That will be at NAS Fort Worth at the Joint Reserve Base on the last weekend in June, the 29th and 30th. It's free, so please come out and enjoy the day. The Navy Blue Angels fly the FNA-18. I personally was recruited into the Navy by seeing the Blue Angels back in the late 60s. It made an impression on me and planted the seed that eventually I joined naval aviation because of seeing those airplanes that day and the professionals that were there supporting the air show.
It's been
Thank you,
great.
Ruthie.
Thank
Okay.
you very much, Captain
It's always
Cannon.
wonderful to be here. Thanks so much, Ruthie.
And
It's
this
been great.
is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.
Good.
You need to sit here a minute with